Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel Tintle and I am the owner and designer behind the Creative Siren. So this week, I'm sure you've noticed, I look a little extra, but that's because I am feeling extra villainous. So this week I decided that we would take a little detour and do one of my, I know I always say that it's one of my favorites, but I have to tell you guys that these are always my favorite. Sculpting is my favorite, but this is another one of my favorites. We're gonna do the Sea Witch Tumbler. Now for this one, I ran out of wine tumblers, which is what I usually do it on, so I turned it into a mug. You can easily do it on either one of those, just alter the way that the tentacles lay. And if you wanted to and feeling adventurous, you can take it onto a regular tumbler. I just like the mugs and the wine tumblers because it gives it that round and voluminous look that a certain sea witch does have. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. So as always, we're starting with a freshly prepped mug, and this time I did not tape my bottom, and there's a reason for that. So grab a slab of conditioned clay. I rolled mine out to be pretty thin here, and we're gonna cover the entire mug. I'll do this in pieces because I don't have the capacity to roll out very large pieces of clay. So if you have a pasta machine, then I would recommend that you use that. If you don't, just roll out in pieces and just piece it all together and just make sure that you blend in those seams. And you'll see me do that here real quick. Don't worry about your blend on these seams to be absolutely perfect. You just want to hide the major lines that are being created because ultimately we're going to be covering this whole cup in tentacles, so you really won't see them later, you won't notice them, but just do the best that you can. And to blend these lines, I'm really just putting, light to medium pressure and just kind of dragging my thumb between these lines to where they just kind of mesh together and so that you don't notice the lines. Now when you have your mug fully covered, we're going to find a middle part here because we're going to start creating kind of that bust line that the Sea Witch has. And so it starts out very curvy at the top, so where her bust is, and then goes down low, and I'm thinking like a low bikini top down at the bottom, so that the top is definitely higher than the back part of the mug. And just even it out as you see fit. So make sure that those curves for her bust are as even as you can get them. And then after you've done that, go ahead and flatten out your edges so that it just doesn't look like a sharp, newly cut line. Now once you've finished flattening out the edges for the top part, you're going to do the same along the bottom and really try and make that clay flush with the bottom. This is a personal preference for me. I don't like to cover the bottoms of my cups completely with the clay. I feel like it's less of a issue if you happen to drop the mug, like a breakage issue, because then when you drop your mug, you're hitting the metal rather than the clay. For me, it's a personal preference. Of course, if you feel like covering that bottom, go for it. Okay, so this is the fun part. Take about a palm size amount of clay and we're gonna roll that out, and it's gonna come to a taper because you really want that end to be a point. Now these are gonna form our tentacles. I usually roll mine out between 6 to 12 inches long, depending on the type of tentacle that I'm gonna do. You guys don't have to follow how I do my tentacles, but I'm going to show you how I do all of them here visually, just so you can kind of get an idea. But just do them any way you want to, really. It's all about loops and like fluid movements within your tentacle. Now here you just saw me cut out a little piece of the tentacle, and that's just so that the tentacles can lay on top of each other without bulging out too much. But again, just do your tentacles any which way. I like to do a lot of curves. I like my points to kind of, you know, go in varied, I guess, directions. So some of them curl in, some of them curl out, some of them just do a loop-de-loop inward. It's completely up to you. You guys, like, let your imagination run wild with these tentacles. Now, I will tell you that the original Sea Witch only has 6 tentacles, and for the spacing on this cup, I found that that was the perfect amount of tentacles. You can certainly add all 8 if you choose to, but I left it at 6. Now when it comes to the handle part, I do the top part first, and I align my tentacles how I, want it to look, and then really start pushing that into the handle of the mug. Your silicone tip tool is really going to come in handy here to blend out those edges where the tentacle meets the rest of the mug. Now to cover the underbelly of this handle, I just take a little piece of clay and I just smooth it out between my fingers. I don't really roll it out, though you can if that makes you more comfortable. And then I just put pieces on the back end and blend it out with the top part of the existing tentacle. And just continue to add little pieces of clay until you have that handle fully covered. And just be sure that your pieces that you're adding aren't too thick. You want to make sure that this handle is easy to grab, and if that tentacle is just too fat, then not only is it more difficult, but then it doesn't really match up with the rest of the tentacles. Now here I'm just adding a little bit of clay and pushing it into the tentacle because I want the transition between the handle and the rest of the tentacle to be really smooth. Just a natural taper, a natural curve from the handle to the end part of the tentacle. And now I'm doing the same thing for the bottom part of the tentacle. I'm filling in the little gaps that are still seen here, but I'm also creating that nice taper so that the end of our tentacle doesn't just do a big drop or have this huge cliff off the edge. You want it to flow really naturally with the rest of the cup. And you guys, don't be afraid to move these tentacles out of the way for just a short bit so that you can really blend in those edges. I mean, remember, you can always put it back, but That way you don't create thumbprints or unnecessary marks that'll cause you more work later. Okay, now when you have your handle fully covered and it's all blended together, grab just an extra little piece of clay and put it right at the base of that handle. Again, creating that smooth, tapered look out. And then just go ahead and take the rest of the bottom of that tentacle and kind of blend it in with the bottom of the cup. You'll probably end up taking off, little chunks at the bottom, and that's completely okay. You want it to be as thin as possible. You don't want a really chunky end to the bottom of your tentacles. And now just start doing it with the rest of your tentacles. Just smooth that out so it comes out to a flat end, and then taper out those tentacles on the sides as well. Almost like a bell bottom, if that makes sense. But it's really thin, and then it just like bells out towards the bottom. And then of course, if you guys have bumps, fingerprints, nail marks, like I always do, just take a little bit of rubbing alcohol and use that to smooth out your clay. And before you put your cup in the oven, after you're all done, make sure that that alcohol has fully evaporated. Otherwise you'll create cracks and other unwanted imperfections. So here we're just gonna roll out a small piece of clay because this is gonna form the seashell for the seashell necklace that she wears. So again, like we did with the tentacles, make sure that your little piece comes to a taper. You really want that end to be a point. And then you're just gonna, cut off the desired amount that you need. So no more than like 3 inches, and just roll it into each other. Really simple. Once you get it to the size that you want, just cut off the end. And then from there you can embellish it, any which way that you like to. I like to take a ball tool and elaborate the very end of the shell so it kind of creates like this little flute at the end. It gives it more dimension, and I like that. I will also come in with either a needle tool or like a chiseled silicone tip tool. And I'll create little lines that go vertically from the center out. Again, they're just little details that I like to do, but you guys decorate your seashells any which way you want to. This is just the way that I prefer. When you're all done with your seashell, go ahead and just place it right where you're going to want it on your mug, and then remove the tape if you have any tape, and then go ahead and stick it in the oven for the amount of time that's indicated on the packaging of your clay. Once your mug is fully baked, cured, and cooled, we're going to start painting it. Now I just added a fresh piece of tape at the top because I like to tape off my rims, and I'm taking off the seashell. Because we're painting this entire thing black. I've found that the purples that I use stand out a lot better up against the black than they do against just the color of the clay or the stainless steel. And just as a reminder to anybody who happens to be new to my channel, please do not use spray paint. I know it's a lot faster, but it will eat away at your clay. and then the clay will eat away at your spray paint and it just turns into a goopy mess. So it's better to use acrylic paints. Once your mug is all done drying, we're going to start painting the rest of our Sea Witch. So I use these three colors, Purple Iris, Princess Purple, and Velvet Crush primarily, but then I'll also mix Velvet Crush with this fuchsia color for the suction cups of the tentacles. So we're going to start off by taking Purple Iris and painting the body of our Sea Witch. Now you can use any color, but I like this color because it's kind of a cool purple, so it's not too warm, which that's something that I just prefer for this mug. And you'll just go ahead and paint it all through. Don't worry if you get a little bit of purple where the black is supposed to be on the tentacles or on the main body of our Sea Witch, because you can always go in and touch it up. I know I do it all the time, but just do your best here. You'll probably need about 2 to 3 coats of this purple to get a very good solid coverage. Now once the top part of her body is all done and painted and dried, we're going to move on to the tentacles. So we're showing a lot of the underbelly of the tentacles here, and you want that to twist a lot throughout the mug. So I start by painting this bottom here, and I use Princess Purple, and I just go ahead and I'll outline where I want like the underbelly of these tentacles to be. And I'll go around and I'll do that first, that way I just don't get too carried away. The general rule of thumb is you want more of the purple to be showing towards the bottom and less of it to be showing towards the top. So through the majority of this mug, you'll see more purple than you will black, and that way when you put epoxy over it, the black doesn't just fade into the background. You're mostly seeing the purple. Now here is when I have my outlines all done, I'll go in and I'll start painting the main part of the tentacle. And again, making sure that that underbelly, that purple part, is giving the illusion of these tentacles twisting. So I start out showing full body of the underbelly, and then I paint it at a diagonal so it looks like that the tentacle is twisting inward. And then I'll lightly like give an outline of the purple right on the outside of that inner tentacle, and then it'll just disappear. So I do that with all of my tentacles. So full body, and then I'll do a twist where I paint it at a diagonal, and then I slowly just make it disappear. When you're all done painting the underbelly of your tentacles, go ahead and paint your seashell. I like to use this Inca Gold metallic paint by Folkart. You can also use Pinata alcohol ink, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to use the acrylic paint. And then just lightly paint it on. You'll probably need about 2 to 3 coats altogether, but after that, it should be ready to go. Now that the underbelly of your tentacles are completely dry, let's move on to the suction cups. I'm going to use a ball tool to add these suction cups, though I know some makers have used 3D or added 3D suction cups with clay. I think that it feels better on the hand when you're holding it, and when you're holding it by the handle, to just have them painted on, but that's just a personal preference. Feel free to add 3D suction cups if you choose. So this is the ball tool that I will be using here. I like this size. For me, it's the perfect size. I'll use the smaller end to get into those curvatures. And then lastly, I will just use a round paintbrush to get the smallest parts. Now here I've mixed Velvet Crush and I'm mixing just a little bit of fuchsia in there to create like a pinky purple to make those suction cups. Now I know that generally octopus don't have more than 2 suction cups sitting side by side each other per tentacle, but it looked weird to me before to have just these 2 on especially the large ends or the large tapers of these mugs. So I added 3, sometimes I'll add 4. Honestly, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just fills the space and I'm happy with it. So you guys just do these how you feel comfortable, but 2 is usually the norm. And then just line them up all the way through. And you'll start to notice that as you get to those curvatures, you'll need to switch to the smaller ball tool. And then keep in mind that when it is on the curvature, you're only probably gonna see 1 tentacle. And then as it gets smaller, you'll probably just see the outer edge of a tentacle, if any at all. When you're all done painting all of your suction cups, let's go ahead and glue on our seashell necklace. So just grab your seashell and some E6000 glue and just attach it right in the middle, right above her bust line. Now, if you don't have E6000, any gel-based like super glue will work. I think Loctite has a gel control glue that I would also recommend if you don't have E6000. Once your seashell is fully secured to your mug, go ahead and paint on the necklace part of the necklace. If you don't feel comfortable painting, you can always cut out just a little bit of vinyl and attach it before you glue on your seashell. I just find this easier personally, and you can make it as thick or as thin as you want to. And if you're like me and you tape off your rims, this is the time to take off that top piece of tape and then add a new one before we start epoxying. Now, when you're adding epoxy to this mug, you're probably going to need more than usual because we have a lot of little crevices to fill. So I would probably suggest that you use maybe double of what you would normally use to cover like the first coat of a tumbler. Just because those curvatures and those little divots and all of that really take up a lot. When I was epoxying this, I actually almost ran out. I almost didn't have enough. So I definitely did a second coat here just to make up for that. But just make sure you get in every little nook and cranny. But if you happen to miss one, don't fret about it. Just add a second layer and it should cover it really well. And then of course, we always hit it with a heat gun real fast just to get rid of any micro bubbles that happen to show up. And there you have it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. I loved making it for you. And like always, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more Tumbler tutorials. If you loved this video, be sure to click here to see our last video. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another tutorial. See you later. Bye!